Hi everyone, you are listening to the TÉKA podcast. I am Georgina Kiskozma, social scientist and bookworm. In the TÉKA podcast episodes, we talk about social issues, each time on new topics. One thing is for sure, we preserve ideas instead of borrowing them. Join us. Hello and welcome to the TÉKA podcast. Each episode is an invitation to slow down, open a book, and join me and my guest in conversations about the power and joy of reading. Today's episode is a special one because my guest is Jash Dholani, best known for his social media platform, The Old Books Guy, which has gathered over 100,000 followers. He spent years exploring rare old books, searching for timeless ideas and lessons, and still resonate today, and he began sharing those insights on X. He's the author of Hit Rivers, New Ideas from Old Books and How to Start, The Art of Beginning Big Things. And his latest book is Bloodless Gutless Heartless, The Case Against A.I. art. His books have been read by thousands of people around the world. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jash. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you for inviting me.
Let's go back to the beginning, the Old Books Guy. When did you first start it, and what made you feel that the world needed this platform?
I started it around 2021, so maybe 4 years ago. It was just a bunch of factors, but a big one was about how there is a certain, it's a very confused world right now. People are confused about work, the future, the relationships, their own self, what to do, what not to do. And if we had all the answers, we wouldn't be so confused, right? If the information that we receive in 2024, 2025 was enough, we would not be so confused. So the fact that people feel disoriented, the fact that people feel lost more than ever before, it implies that something is missing in what we are hearing, in what we are receiving from the contemporary culture, from the modern world. And so if something is missing from the modern world, perhaps you should turn back to the old world. The world has this very rich, beautiful past history. So the good thing about being the old books guy is that I have a lot to choose from. These books have been stress tested by time. They have offered different things to different generations. So perhaps what an old book which I'm using to talk about issues in 2025, it would have meant something else to people in 1925 or people in 1825, but it means something else to people in 2025. So there is this beautiful way in which a book can morph and mean different things at different points in time. But that's also the mark of a great book, that it transforms itself as the time changes.
I often say that reading only seems like a solitary activity, but in truth, it brings people together, as you have already mentioned. It is a very important thing. Personally, I've made friendships through books that I never would have had otherwise. And your platform now has more than 100,000 followers. That's no small thing. Do you think books still have the power to build community in today's very individualistic and often lonely world?
Yeah, I think the death of the book is greatly exaggerated, right? So I think in the early 2000s, we had the internet and the smartphone, and Google came up, Facebook came up, Amazon Kindle came up, and people predicted the death of the physical book. People predicted that, people are gonna not read anymore, the screens are getting too interesting, they're getting too addictive. But if you actually look at the number of physical books sold every year since 1990, it's essentially a flat line. You can literally not even tell when the internet was invented on that graph. So that is a counterintuitive fact that people are usually surprised by. But to me, it makes sense because what a book can do, a screen just cannot do. You're right. a book can become a medium with sparks of dialogue, right? It You can agree about a book, you can disagree about a book, but in both cases you can start a new dialogue. I think a physical book is just such a deeper level of engagement with any idea. You can have an idea, you can read a tweet about it, you can watch a YouTube video about it, you can watch a 10-second TikTok about it, but the depth and the detail that a physical book would give you is not matched by any other medium. And yeah, I think for that, in other words, a physical book is very Lindy, which is to say that it's been around for thousands. So the Lindy principle is that if a thing has been around for 100 years, then you can probably expect it to be around for another 100 years. But if a thing has been around for thousands of years, you can expect it to be around for thousands of years in the future. The ancient Egyptians were writing things down in a physical form. The ancient Indians were doing it. The physical book format will be with us for a very long time.
I agree with you because for me, life without books is unimaginable. I read every day, even if it's only 5 minutes. As you mentioned, some people argue that the printed book is on its way out. However, I think printed books are very important and have a real value. What do you think? Are young people really not reading anymore?
Yeah, I think they need to be spoken to in a language that they understand, right? So the thing with books is that it's not the it's the format is not the problem, right? I mean, just look back to the Harry Potter phenomenon, right? Just billions of young kids around the world reading these 500, 600 page thick books. So people want to read, young kids want to read, they just have to be spoken to in their language. I think what's gone wrong with books hasn't been so much technological as cultural. So, what's happened is there has been this idea that there are no grand theories of the world, there are no right answers, there is no good or evil. Everything is subjective, everything is culturally dependent, and to some degree, that's true. What might be true for you in Hungary might not be true for me in India, right? There are obvious cultural differences. But the thing is that give someone a you cannot expect someone to get through a 300-page book and only make them more confused by the end of it. Books have to be a tool for dialogue, yes, but they have to be a tool for clarity. They have to be a tool to give people what they need to live more positive, useful lives. And this postmodernism has to go. This idea that we can simply not know what the answers are, right? No, no. The answers can be discovered, they can be shared, they can be jotted into books and made permanently useful. And I think that's what is actually missing from a bookstore. Like, you go into a bookstore and there is no positive vision of what a life could be. And I think that's what people want. People don't want easy answers that you get in the self-help books where it's, all the obvious, repetitive, boring stuff. That's not interesting. People also don't want this like permanent state of chaos and, oh, we just don't know what to do. Recently, Yuval Harari, who's probably the world's best-selling author right now, right? Famous for writing *Sapiens* and other books. Yuval Harari said that we don't know what to teach kids because we don't know what careers will be around in 20 years. That superficially might be true. 20 years ago, 20 years in the past, probably there were no podcasts, or 30 years ago, there were no podcasts, and now we are recording a podcast. So, superficially, yes, new jobs and new activities come up. But at a deeper level, critical thinking, imagination, creativity, these things will always be valuable. They were valuable 2000 years ago, they are going to be valuable 2000 years from now. So this idea that, oh, the future is going to be it's not going to be that different. It's actually going to be pretty similar. It's going to be pretty similar. People are going to have to work hard. People are going to have to compete with each other. Creativity will always give you an edge. Imaginative divergent thinking will always give you an edge. So you can teach these things. You can actually, if I tell a young person, it doesn't even matter what you learn right now. uh, 20 years later it's going to be totally chaotic and different. That person is going to become dejected, demotivated, and not want to learn anything. Then you can't complain that, oh, kids are not reading, right?
Childhood is a very important phase of our lives, of course, and childhood is usually the very first step on the journey to becoming a lifelong reader. For me, one of the most defining experiences was reading in bed almost every night with my mom and sister, and it was a constant in my life, whether the day had been good or bad. It could always count on that moment. And so books, their smell and the feel of their pages will forever remind me of those happy childhood memories. What about you? What are your earliest memories of books and who inspired you the most?
Yeah, I think I remember being perhaps around 11 years old and discovering Sherlock Holmes. And I think that was an important childhood experience for my young reader self. That was the first time a book had truly gripped me, interested me. Sherlock Holmes is, obviously he's the world's most famous fictional detective. And that started my habit off. And I was also a very, ardent, uh, obsessive quizzer. I loved to participate in quiz competitions, and books gave me an edge. They helped me win my quiz competitions because I had more facts and I knew more things than the people I was competing against, because I was in the library more often than they were. And so, yeah, weirdly enough, those two factors contributed to my early reading habits.
As a youth researcher, I often get asked whether young people need to read the classics today. The counter argument is that their lives are so different, the language of those books can feel too challenges, and that discourage them, and so they just turn to their devices instead of book. Because I love books so much, I always argue that the classics are still worth reading. So to stay honest about this, a few years ago I began reading and rereading them myself, and I was surprised at how relevant many of them still feel. How do you see it? How can we get young people excited about old books? And what would you tell them? Why are they still worth picking up?
Yeah, I don't know if people, even young people, mind challenging stuff. Like, again, to go back to Harry Potter, or to, take Dan Brown, who also writes these very long winded, cryptic, 800-page novels which involve a lot of puzzles and mysteries. I think people actually want to be challenged when they're reading, when they're consuming a film or whatever. I think people actually want to be challenged. The problem comes when you're right, when the language is not something that might be your language, right? When the language might be too alienating or too different. I think the good thing about classics is that they're classics for a reason, which is that they're talking about timeless themes. They're talking about archetypes, patterns of human behavior, wisdom, which never really goes out of fashion. But it is true that the classics have to be updated, and they have to be made legible, and they have to be translated for into the language of today. And for that you need the storytellers, right? Some storyteller has to come out, and he has to uh, feel what the pulse of the time is, and he has to be a master of two worlds. He or she has to be a master of the classics world, and deeply feel the wisdom that they contain, but also be a master in this world and be very well versed with the language of this world, and somehow bring the two together. So I think people, and sometimes there are people who do that very successfully. Um, there's a sense in which, Jordan Peterson has made this point that Harry Potter is a biblical story. right? And Harry Potter ultimately sacrifices himself, which is very similar to the biblical story. And then he is reborn, which is very similar to the story in the Bible. So, and I haven't read the Bible or Harry Potter that closely to confirm this, but he's a very intelligent, deep thinker, and I tend to agree with him. That's what you need. The classics contain the wisdom, but they have to be repackaged. They have to be re-narrated in a format, in a language which people find easy to get into.
What is your favorite old book?
Yeah, there are so many. I am famous for posting a lot about Friedrich Nietzsche, who's my favorite philosopher, perhaps. He wrote so many great books. His book, The Joyous Wisdom, is fantastic. It was written around 1881, and around 150 years ago now. It's a brilliant work. It's a book about everything. It has insight and wisdom on religion, on human psychology, on art, on creativity, on excellence and striving to be your best self. And it's a very mysterious book. You can read it multiple times and always get many things out of it. So that's always good.
You love reading old books, but on the other hand, you are a writer.
Yes.
And this year you're releasing your fourth book, Bloodless Gutless Heartless. I have to say I love the cover of your new book. It really stands out. Words like revolutionary, futuristic, end of art, magical, advanced, path-breaking, next big thing, death of artist are all crossed out.
Yes.
But the words bloodless, gutless, heartless remain. Were those other words once possible title ideas, or is the cover pointing us to deeper meaning behind the title itself? What exactly does bloodless, gutless, heartless refer to?
Yeah, it's my description of AI art. So I'm saying that AI art, artificially generated art, AI generated art is essentially bloodless, gutless, and heartless, because the machine that created that painting or that poem doesn't have any blood, doesn't have guts, and doesn't have a heart. So the cover that you're describing, that is the paperback cover. And you're right. There are many words which are scratched out, and I wanted the cover to have this like hand painted, hand drawn, organic, rough texture to it, because it's in contrast with AI generated art, which is polished but empty. And it looks perfect when you look at it for a second, but then when you keep looking at it, it becomes weirder and emptier. uh, yeah, I think people say all these things about AI art, that it's revolutionary, that it's going to be the end of artists. And so these are claims that people are making about AI art. And so I've scratched them out because I think they're wrong. So that is kind of the logic of the cover design.
In your book, you're tackling some pretty big questions, like whether art itself is on the edge of extinction or whether AI can actually replace creativity. And as the back cover text says, the book promises to help us uncover the true nature of creativity and show how our art is inseparable from our humanity. Who did you write this book for, and why was it so important for you to address this now?
Yeah, I wrote it. I wrote this book for for myself. I wrote it for all the creative people in the world. I wrote it for writers, illustrators, designers, painters, animators, filmmakers, songwriters, anyone who does creative work. Everyone has an aspect of creativity in their work life, right? That to everyone's creative self. That's who I wrote this book for. It was very important to write this book because there is this misunderstanding out there that the machines can be creative. And I think that is actually an attack on human dignity, because what is truly special about human beings is the fact that they can create something out of nothing. is the fact that they can spot opportunities that some spreadsheet or some computer, some code cannot spot. I want more creativity in the world. That is what I enjoy. I love watching great films. I love reading great books. I love looking at interesting architecture. I am a huge fan of creative human output, and I feel that that is somehow under attack. Not because the machine is going to be more creative. I wish the machine was more creative, right? I wish the machines could join us in our quest to create new things. But the machines are only ever going to be faithful servants. They are going to be good, perhaps, at some point. I don't think they are even good right now. Like, I cannot describe to the machine and have it write a story for me. The machine just doesn't understand, obviously enough, human behavior, human all these details about the human experience, which only human beings know. But this book is a pushback. I want to push back against this idea that the machines are going to do our creative work for us, because what this idea does is that even if it's untrue, and it is untrue, it leads to a lot of artists becoming dejected and demotivated and not even working at their craft anymore. And that is a problem, because I care about creative output. I want more creative people. I want more creative things in the world. And that is the motivation for this next book.
Yes, I think it is one of the most important and pressing questions today. You mentioned all of these issues, but do you think human creativity is truly at risk, or is it more about learning to use technology carefully and wisely? So, to sum up, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future in this case? Because it is a big choice for humanity how we see technology.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think, you always have to be careful about the future. There are just so many ways in which we can slip up as individuals, as societies. But I am optimistic. I think it's so. You said that, can't we just use this as a tool, right? But the thing is that every tool is a trap, right? Every tool forces you to look at the world a certain way. So if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem looks like nails, right? So I think every tool traps you in a certain perspective. We do need tools. We need tools to write. For example, I've noticed something about my own creative process. When I am writing on a laptop versus when I am writing using pen and paper, I am more creative. My ideas flow better, and they are more novel and interesting when I'm using pen and paper. And I think the reason for that is that the frame of the laptop really traps me into thinking a certain way, because it's this like limited screen. But somehow having a blank paper in front of me opens my mind up. So the tool that you're using will influence the quality of your work. And that is something that people need to think a lot more about. So, is Photoshop faster? Is it faster to, make a painting, make a digital painting? Yes, it is, because you can change things very quickly, you can start over very quickly, and there's value in that. And I use digital tools, obviously. I'm not writing my books by hand, I'm writing them on a laptop. But then, are there advantages to using paper? Are there advantages to using older, more primitive tools? Sometimes, yes, there are. So I think this sort of meta awareness is important, that use any tool that you prefer, but be aware that for every advantage a tool brings, it brings disadvantages. And as an artist, you have to strike that balance based on what you need at the moment.
It's very interesting because I love thinking about things and ideas when I'm walking. It happens a lot, but then I sit down in front of my computer and my ideas just fly away. So, yes, I can completely understand what you are saying. In part one of your book, you lay out 7 reasons why technology will never be able to create art, and that really caught my attention. Could you give us a little sneak peek?
Sure, yeah, let me give you 2 reasons. So, one of the chapters is called AI Will Never Have a Point of View. So the only reason to read a book is that the author has a point of view that is different or interesting or unique or fascinating or mysterious that you want to learn. There is no other reason to read a book, right? uh, Human beings have a point of view because they have a specific backstory. You talked about your childhood and how one of your earliest reading memories was reading in bed with your mother, right? That is your point of view. That is a memory you have, and your memories shape your point of view in ways that you are aware of and in ways that you're not aware of. Your experiences, the people around you, the personality that you were born with, that you have cultivated over time, the interests, that the hobbies that you've cultivated, what you studied, the travel experiences you've had, all these things are influencing consciously and unconsciously Georgina's point of view, right? My point of view similarly comes from my childhood, my experiences, my hobbies, my travel experiences, my suffering, my pain, the things that I have experienced, positive and negative. That point of view is totally lacking in ChatGPT. I mean, ChatGPT doesn't have a childhood memory, right? ChatGPT doesn't go travel in Switzerland. ChatGPT doesn't have any perspective. All that it has is information, and it's trying to correlate all the information to each other. All these data points, it's trying to correlate with each other, but it has no context of what they meant, of what they it has no. So for example, when I for imagine we are talking, right, and you use the word run in some context, the word run, a very simple word. uh I know what it feels like to run, right? I know what it feels, the physiological, emotional, biological, physical experience of running. I know what it feels like. When ChatGPT uses the word run, it has never gone on a run in his entire life. It has no actual awareness of what the words that it's using, what they mean. And that's a big problem. It has no perspective, it has no point of view, it has no awareness of the meaning behind the words that it's using so confidently. So that's what's one big problem, isn't it? Imagine I give you my next book next year, and imagine it's like a guide to Rome, right? And for example, you're gonna go to Rome, and I give you my book, and I'm like, hey, I've written a book about Rome, actually, and you're like, oh, that's nice. I'm gonna go to Rome. This should be helpful. And then I tell you, but I've never been to Rome. I've just read up about Rome on the internet, and I've written a book about it. You would immediately be like, hey, this book is useless. I want to read a book about Rome from someone who's been to Rome. Like, what's the point of a book from someone who's not been to Rome? And ChatGPT's been nowhere. It's had no experience. ChatGPT AI systems, they've had no experience, and I think it's kind of similar. So for me, AI is like that. It's writing books about subjects that it's never felt, about places it's never been to, and all its perspectives are borrowed, and that's why useless.
It's a tough call, honestly. I'm not even sure I know the answer. I hadn't used ChatGPT until this spring, mainly because I was a bit afraid of it. I'd read that it could be quite addictive. But then there was a discussion about artificial intelligence, about how it's shaping young people's lives, and I thought, well, I'm going to talk about its impact. I should at least try using it myself. Well, my experience was kind of strange. In some ways, it makes finding solutions so much easier. At first, I used it simply of curiosity and because I needed to prepare for the conversation. The next day, I used it again because I needed a quick answer to something. And that's when I realized I could really get used to it. It's just so convenient. So I stopped myself. I told myself, okay, I'll use it only when I need information quickly. But then I started to feel tempted to use it for brainstorming and generating ideas. And that was the red line I didn't want to cross. What about you? Have you ever used ChatGPT?
Yeah, I've tried using it. I've used it extensively. I've used ChatGPT. I've used its competitors. I find that it has a huge problem with hallucinations. It makes up things. It lies to you. It will just straight up make. I was researching for my book actually, and I remembered reading a very specific quote which I forgot, but I knew the author it was from, right? And but I this author had written, it's a psychologist called Otto Rank, and Otto Rank has written a lot of books, probably more than a dozen books, and so many essays. And I wasn't sure what book or essay the quote is from. So I tried describing the quote to one, AI system, and I asked it to figure out which book it's from so I could find the exact passage. And it gave me this exact book and it gave me this exact page number, and then I got the book and then I opened that page number and the code wasn't there. The AI system had totally dreamt it up, it totally made it up. It hallucinated that this code existed where the code did not exist. So for me, that's a big problem. If I have a research assistant and that research assistant tells me that, I found this book and it has that code, I can trust it because it's a human being. And if she's claiming that she's found a code, then she'll probably be right. But you can't trust the AI at all, so you have to cross check everything. You have to it then takes more time, right? Instead of like saving me time, I found that it was taking me more time to get through the research. So now they are claiming that the hallucinations are better, but yeah, because since they are not 100% gone, you'll always just have to check everything that it tells you. And there are literally faster, the older style of actually just getting the book and trying to figure out where the quote is, might be faster.
On the one hand, ChatGPT isn't really reliable yet, but maybe it will be in the future because development is so fast. On the other hand, its effect on creativity is a much harder question. That's why I find your book so important. You ask whether AI is actually a demon. I'm really curious. How do you think we should see AI?
Yeah, I'm obviously being I'm being a bit tongue in cheek with this claim, but you're right. One of my chapters is AI a demon? And my argument is something like this, right? Like, what does a demon want, right? Like, try to think like a demon. If there was a demon, then what would he want? He would want you to be weak. He would want you to outsource your thinking to something else, right? It wouldn't want you to be an independent thinker because then you're difficult to control. But if you outsource your thinking, then you're easy to control. And once you start thinking like that, right? Like, what is AI telling you? AI is telling you that you're too slow, you have too many emotional biases, you have too many human weaknesses. You get tired, you fall sick, you need to sleep every night, your brain isn't big enough. It's telling you everything that's wrong with you. And then it's telling you, and therefore, you should stop thinking. You're emotionally biased anyway, you're weak anyway, you're kind of stupid anyway. Outsource your thinking to me. Let me do it. I'll think on your behalf. What is that? Isn't would someone who if someone cares for you, right? Or if a system cares for you, would that system or would that person want you to think for yourself, or would they want you to outsource your thinking? Would they tell you everything that's wrong with you and why you're not good enough? Or would they tell you that, no, you can do it? You should figure out your own conclusions. You should do your own research. You should use your own mind, right? Someone who cares for you, who wants you to be stronger, would say that. Someone who doesn't care for you, who wants you to be weaker, would tell you, no, 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 stop thinking. Just outsource it to the system, outsource it to the machine, let the machine do it. So there are all these subtle messages from AI, and they are messages which weaken you, I think. And that's partly what I say in that chapter, that a demon would want you to be weaker so it can control you, and AI wants you to be weaker so it can control you. So, like, I don't know, is AI a demon?
Yes, that's a very good question. I don't know the answer yet, but I would definitely read your book. I suppose that books can be a very effective protection against AI as a kind of demon. So, finally, one of my last questions. What was the last book you read? And which books would you recommend to young people here in Hungary an absolutely must reads?
Yeah, I think people should read whatever they enjoy, right? So, one of I'll give you recommendations which I give to people. It's just so, I think you have to find your own favorites, right? Because there's no point in me telling people to read something, but then they don't enjoy it, then they're like, reading isn't fun. Um, People should, in fact, the way to go about this is that you shouldn't read to read, and some people disagree with me on this, but you will ultimately, if you're just reading to read, you'll get bored, you'll get tired, you'll get frustrated. I think you should find what topics are really close to you. So you should find what you're interested in, and then you should find the right book, right? So your interests, your obsessions, your curiosity should determine what you read, what's on your bookshelf. I am interested right now, I'm reading a lot about sacred geometry, actually. I'm reading a lot about the divine proportion. I'm reading about the golden ratio, which is this very interesting topic at the intersection of aesthetics and philosophy and mathematics. And Leonardo da Vinci was obsessed with the golden ratio. He illustrated a book about the divine proportion. And you go back 2000 years ago, and the Roman architects and the Greek architects were also obsessed with the golden ratio. The Indian architects were obsessed with the golden ratio. There are like 1,000-year-old temples in India, 1,500-year-old temples in India, which are built on very specific ratios, and which are built on the Fibonacci sequence, for example. And so there are these numbers and patterns in geometry which pop up everywhere in architecture and design, and they pop up in nature. So that is something I'm reading about right now. And that's my interest. If other people are interested in this, then they can probably check out books like, there's one great book about this called A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe. A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe. And there are 9 chapters, 9 or 10 in that book, and it shows you how there are essentially these 9 to 10 numbers, 9 to 10 patterns that are inside everything. Like, these patterns are inside the human body. They are at the solar system level. Like, they apply at all levels, right? And that's kind of interesting. Like, when very small systems like the human cell and huge systems like the solar system seem to be designed using similar patterns, that's very fascinating to me. But yeah, I would just recommend people to ask themselves, or to like look at their life, and like probably notice, just notice, what do you find interesting, what do you keep thinking about, and then use Google, use ChatGPT, use whatever tool you want, and find books on those subjects, and then read like 5 or 6. Don't read like one or two book, and give yourself an opportunity to find the book that might be right for you. I mean, in school you probably have like 20, 30, 40 classmates, but you become friends with like one or two people, right? You don't become friends with all 40 people. So it's similar with books. You might interact with 40, 50 books to find like the one or two books which are really good for you. So that's how it is.
Or go to the library because
There you go.
there is full of books. Yeah. I can stand questioning one more important question from your book. Why were the artists in ancient Egypt obsessed with cats?
It's a very interesting mystery, actually, because there's no way to know. We can't actually ask them, but they built temples to their cat goddess, Bastet, There are like massive temples in ancient Egypt. The biggest festival in ancient Egypt, the biggest annual festival, the way it's Christmas in Western Europe and the US and much of the world, and it's Diwali in India, right? The biggest festival of the year. In ancient Egypt, the biggest festival was a cat festival. They declared this annual holiday and they celebrated their biggest festival. It was a cat worship festival. So, do you like cats? Is that why you're asking?
Yes, I do.
Oh, do you have a cat?
And unfortunately not yet, but yes, I love cats.
Me too. I love cats. And so I think what was going on with ancient Egyptians is that, and this is not my theory, this is Camille Paglia's theory, who is a French scholar. And she says that the cat is a fusion of opposites. So a cat is simultaneously um, very playful, very adorable, very cute, but also in a moment it becomes dangerous and angry. And on one hand, a cat loves attention, right? A cat almost has a sense of symmetry. So, and this is something I've noticed, when you have a sofa, a cat will go sit right in the center, right? Or like when you have even a piece of paper lying on the floor, a cat will like position itself right in the center. So it has this like sense of poise and symmetry and style. But then at the same time, if you look at a black cat in the evening, there's a darkness to it and there's this mystery to it. And cats sort of love dark corners, right? And in medieval times, they were actually hunted because they were associated with witches. So cats are simultaneously, they love the spotlight, they love being in the dark, they have a sense of symmetry and style and poise, but they're also like random and unpredictable. And so they are a fusion of all these like different opposite values, right? And the way Camille Paglia, the French scholar, the way she puts it is that a cat is because she combines these opposite values. The ancient Egyptians worshipped the cat, and they also worshipped the crocodile, because a crocodile is also similar in the sense that it's a master of two realms, water and earth, right? It can survive on land, it can survive in water, it knows how to navigate two different realms. And a cat is similar, it navigates between the darkness and between light, between being, beautiful and symmetric, and they have a sense of cleanliness. Cats are cleaning themselves all the time, they're grooming themselves all the time, but then they also have this mysterious, foreboding, dark energy, right? And so, what the Egyptians noticed is how there were certain animals and certain symbols which were in the middle, right in the middle, and that's why they celebrated that. They celebrated that balance, and they celebrated that fusion of opposites.
So it is definitely worth reading your book. I would recommend it to everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for your thought-provoking answers. Thank you for listening to the TÉKA podcast. I hope our conversation has inspired you to pick up a book, revisit an old favorite, or simply think about reading in a new way. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to join us again for more talks about books and the love of reading. Until next time. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the TÉKA podcast. You can find more content on the Youth Research Institute's website and Facebook page.